I've worked as a flight attendant for Sierra West Airlines for 6 years now, and I thought I'd seen it all. Bachelor parties trying to smuggle entire coolers on board, passengers attempting to open emergency exits mid-flight because they wanted fresh air, and even someone who tried to charge their phone by jamming the charger into the reading light. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the woman in seat 14C on that Tuesday evening flight. Her name was Pamela Northcut, and from the moment she stepped onto the aircraft, she radiated the kind of energy that makes every service worker's stomach drop. She had a sharp bob haircut that looked like it could cut glass, a tennis club tan, and designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the fact that we were indoors. She was dragging what I can only describe as a steamer trunk disguised as a personal item, and under her other arm was a small, perfectly groomed Shih Tzu wearing a rhinestone collar. I approached her with my practiced smile, the one I've perfected over thousands of flights. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm afraid that bag will need to be gate-checked. It won't fit in the overhead compartment." She looked at me like I'd just asked her to donate a kidney. "Excuse me? I have GOLD status. This is my personal item." "I understand, but our personal item dimensions are 9 inches by 10 inches by 17 inches, and that bag appears to be." "Are you calling me a liar?" She cut me off, her voice rising several decibels. Several passengers looked up from their phones. "I measured this at home. This is within regulations." I maintained my calm tone, the one that usually diffuses these situations. "I'm happy to help you gate-check it at no charge. It'll be waiting for you right when you deplane." She narrowed her eyes at me, and I watched her read my name tag with the intensity of someone memorizing an enemy's face. "Logan McAllister," she said slowly, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to remember that name." Before I could respond, she thrust the dog toward me. "And this is Penelope Beyonce. She's a medical device. Certified emotional support animal." I'd heard this before, many times. "Do you have documentation from a licensed mental health professional dated within the past year?" "I don't need documentation," she snapped. "I have rights. The ADA protects me." "The Air Carrier Access Act requires documentation for emotional support animals," I explained gently. "But if she's in an approved carrier that fits under the seat in front of you." "Under the seat?" Pamela's voice reached a pitch that probably bothered dogs in a 5-mile radius. "She's a medical device, not luggage. She sits on my lap." This was going to be a long flight. After a 15-minute negotiation that involved my supervisor, the gate agent, and Pamela threatening to sue everyone individually, we finally got her seated. The dog went in a carrier. The massive bag got gate-checked. And Pamela spent the entire boarding process on her phone, angle perfect for a video, describing her persecution to her followers. I moved through my pre-flight duties on autopilot, checking that seatbelts were fastened, tray tables were up, and carry-ons were properly stowed. Everything was routine until we started taxiing toward the runway. That's when Pamela decided to stand up. "Ma'am, please take your seat," I said, walking toward her. "We're preparing for takeoff." She held up a hand to silence me while continuing to film herself. "This is content, babes," she said into her phone. Then she turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm a taxpayer. I paid for this flight. I can stand if I want to." Federal Aviation Administration regulations require all passengers to be seated with seatbelts fastened during taxi, takeoff, and landing, I recited. "It's for your safety and the safety of others." "Federal regulations," she mocked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You know what else is federal? My right to free speech and freedom of movement." A man in row 12, who I later learned was a retired FAA inspector named Mr. Grady, leaned into the aisle. "Miss, he's right. You need to sit down." Pamela whirled on him. "Did I ask you, sir? This is between me and Logan whatever here." She turned back to me, pulling out a printed document from her purse. It had clip art eagles and was written entirely in Comic Sans font. "I printed this. It's the Passenger Bill of Rights. I'm allowed to use personal electronics during takeoff because I pay taxes and this is America." "That's not how any of this works," I said, my patience starting to fray at the edges. She ignored me completely, reaching up to open an overhead bin during the turn onto the runway. The plane was moving. She was standing. And she was now rummaging through luggage while we accelerated toward takeoff position. "Ma'am, sit down now," I said, my voice firm. This wasn't a request anymore. Instead of complying, Pamela pulled out her phone again, live streaming at full volume. "Everyone watching, meet Logan. He's trying to violate my constitutional rights at 30,000 feet. Should I get him fired?" We weren't even at 30,000 feet yet. We were still on the ground. The comments on her live stream started pouring in, which she read aloud with glee. #fire Logan. "Yes, babes, I'm taking notes." She pointed her phone camera directly at my face. "Say hi to your unemployment, Logan." I pressed the call button for the flight deck. This was beyond my pay grade now. But Pamela wasn't done. She decided this was the perfect moment to march toward the galley, shoulder-checking me on the way past. She grabbed the intercom phone like it was a karaoke microphone at a bar. "Attention passengers," her voice crackled through the entire aircraft. "You are all witnesses to my oppression. This flight attendant is discriminating against me because I'm a woman, because I have a dog, and because I know my rights." Several passengers groaned. A baby started crying. The PDA president in row 10 whispered to her husband, "She's embarrassing all of us named Pamela." Then Pamela did something that made my blood run cold. She walked toward the cockpit door. The locked, federally protected, absolutely do not touch cockpit door. I stepped between her and the door immediately. "Ma'am, you cannot approach the cockpit. I want to speak to whoever's flying this plane," she demanded. "This is customer service. I demand service. The captain is busy flying the aircraft. Please return to your seat." She looked at me, looked at her phone, looked back at me, and then did something I still can't quite believe. She threw herself onto the floor in the most dramatic faint I've ever witnessed, complete with a hand to her forehead and a shriek that could shatter glass. "Assault!" she screamed from the floor. "I've been assaulted by hospitality. I'm calling 911. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the news." Her phone, still streaming, captured the entire performance from floor level, perfectly angled to show her good side, and the stunned faces of 137 passengers who couldn't believe what they were watching. That's when the other passengers got involved. The two off-duty nurses in row 9 rushed up to check her vitals. One of them, a woman with kind eyes and zero patience, knelt down and took Pamela's pulse. Her heart rate is perfect. Blood pressure seems fine based on her color. She's medically stable. The other nurse looked at Pamela with the expression of someone who has seen too many emergency rooms to fall for dramatics. "Ma'am, if you're truly injured, we'll need to divert to the nearest airport for medical attention. That would require an ambulance, a hospital visit, and probably a 24-hour observation period." Pamela's eyes, which had been squeezed dramatically shut, popped open. "I don't need a hospital." "Then you're fine to return to your seat," the nurse said flatly. Mr. Grady, the retired FAA inspector, appeared at my elbow with a small notebook. "Son, I've been documenting everything. Interference with crew duties, tampering with safety equipment, and attempted unauthorized access to the flight deck. I'll sign any statement you need." Before I could thank him, the intercom crackled to life. It was Captain Amanda Ruiz, and her voice had the energy of someone who had reached the absolute limit of her patience. "Flight attendants, prepare for a return to gate." The cabin erupted in groans and protests, but not directed at me. Every single complaint was aimed at Pamela, who was still sitting on the floor, phone in hand, trying to explain to her live stream audience why this was everyone else's fault. The taxi back to the gate felt like it took hours. Pamela spent the entire time alternating between filming herself and yelling threats. "I'm going to sue this airline into bankruptcy. I'm going to get all of you fired. Do you know who I am? I have GOLD status. I run a real estate empire." When we finally stopped at the jet bridge, I opened the aircraft door to find 2 airport police officers and our station manager waiting, hands on hips, expressions unreadable. Captain Ruiz emerged from the cockpit holding her clipboard like a weapon. She walked past me, past Pamela, and stood in the aisle where everyone could see her. The cabin went completely silent. "Miss Northcut," Captain Ruiz said, her voice cool and measured, "you are being removed from this flight for interfering with crew member duties and tampering with aircraft safety equipment, both of which are federal offenses. Effective immediately, you are permanently banned from all Sierra West Airlines flights." Pamela laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded like a car alarm malfunctioning. "You can't ban me. I'm GOLD status. Do you know how much money I spend with this airline?" Captain Ruiz didn't blink. "Your lifetime ban is effective immediately. Officers, she's all yours." "This is illegal." Pamela shrieked, scrambling to her feet. "I have a lawyer. I have rights. I have documentation." The PDA president from row 10 leaned over and said in a stage whisper, "Honey, you just live-streamed yourself committing multiple federal crimes. Your own phone is going to be used as evidence." One of the officers took Pamela's elbow gently but firmly. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." As they escorted her down the jet bridge, her phone still streaming in her hand, I could see the comment section absolutely exploding. Someone had posted, "Girl, you just speed-ran the no-fly list." Another said, "Main character syndrome meets federal regulations." The entire aircraft burst into applause. It started in the back rows and rolled forward like a wave, growing louder until it was almost deafening. Passengers were clapping, cheering, and a few were even standing. The baby who had been crying earlier let out what I swear was a happy shriek. Captain Ruiz turned to me and held out her hand. "Good job keeping everyone safe, Logan." I shook her hand, still slightly in shock from everything that had just happened. Within 3 hours, Pamela had posted a response video from the terminal. She was sitting on her steamer trunk, Penelope Beyonce in her lap, explaining to her phone camera that she had chosen to leave the flight because her standards were sky-high and the airline didn't deserve her business. The comments were savage. "You got banned, sis. There was no choosing involved. Imagine fumbling your entire airline relationship this hard." The second-hand embarrassment is astronomical. But the real consequence came 2 weeks later. I heard through the station manager that Pamela had tried to book flights on 4 other major airlines, and each time she was mysteriously unable to complete her reservation. Word had spread. The industry is smaller than people think. When you get banned from one airline for federal violations, the others tend to notice. The last I heard, she had to rent a 2004 minivan for a 3-day cross-country drive to a real estate conference she absolutely couldn't miss. No first-class seat, no priority boarding, no GOLD status benefits. Just her, Penelope Beyonce, and a lot of highway rest stops. And me. I finished that flight, landed safely in St. Augustine, and received a handwritten thank-you note from Captain Ruiz. As I walked down the aisle during deplaning, passengers fist-bumped me, thanked me, and one woman even tried to tip me $20, which I politely declined because we're not allowed to accept tips, but I really appreciated the gesture. That footage of Pamela tugging at the smoke detector cover became mandatory viewing in Sierra West's annual safety training. They literally use her as an example of what not to do. Every new hire class watches Pamela Northcut's greatest hits, and I've been told the training instructors have to pause the video multiple times because everyone is laughing too hard to concentrate. The fine from the FAA arrived at her address 6 weeks after the incident. $15,000 for interfering with flight crew members. Another $5,000 for tampering with safety equipment. And because she live-streamed the entire thing, providing all the evidence they needed, there was no appeal, no negotiation, no getting out of it. According to Mr. Grady, who I exchanged emails with after the flight, Pamela tried to fight it. She hired a lawyer, filed complaints, and even started a petition claiming her First Amendment rights had been violated. The petition got 37 signatures before it was taken down. The FAA doesn't care about your GOLD status. The FAA doesn't care about your real estate empire. The FAA cares about safety, federal regulations, and the fact that you can't just do whatever you want at 35,000 feet. When the final total came through, Pamela owed $20,000 in federal fines, plus court costs, plus lawyer fees. Her response, posted on social media before her account went mysteriously quiet, was one sentence. This is America? Yes, Pamela. This is America. Where you're free to act however you want, right up until you interfere with a flight crew. Then freedom meets consequences, and consequences have a very expensive price tag.